translated with DeepL.com. Disclaimer: this is an unofficial translation. Source FIGU Bulletin 107 on page 2 to 4.
Just another piece of the puzzle.
During his great journey through the solid-state universe belt, which took place from July 17, 1975, and in which guided observations and conversations were documented as the 31st contact conversation, Billy and Ptaah also talked in detail about the ozone belt among many other topics. Quote from Plejadisch-plejarische Contact Reports, Block 1, page 448.
Nature itself always produces exactly as much ozone as is necessary to guarantee life, whether this happens as a result of lightning phenomena or through the effect of ultraviolet radiation itself or through other natural events. It always remains the same. Nature never produces more ozone than it needs. Exceptions are only made when disasters occur, which are usually of cosmic or planetary origin.
But what about the atomic radiation which, according to my calculations, must have surrounded the Earth at very high altitudes?
Your calculations are correct, but it is not actually atomic radiation. As I said before, very special elementary radiations as well as particles are produced by the explosion. These are the ones that reach very high altitudes and spread around the globe, affecting different layers. In your terms, these layers are named very differently, including one of the equally endangered layers that you call Van Allen belts. This belt consists especially of electrons and protons captured by the earthly magnetic field, which fulfill a function vital to life on Earth. But I am not allowed to give any further details about this, because from these explanations a lot of values could be drawn for your scientists for their research and would give them means, which they could not yet become powerful.
Then nothing can be done. Under this I can't really imagine anything, nor can I work out anything with the protons and electrons. But that doesn't matter. I'm only interested in how this belt is constructed. I mean, what movement it has. I am also interested in the further belt that is supposed to exist far outside our Earth and outside the Pluto bane together with the Oort cloud, as Sam Jace recently told me in confidence.
The Van Allen belt is located at an average altitude of 1,000 kilometers. The charged particles are in constant motion, at spiral tracks from pole to pole. The other belt you mentioned is actually still unknown and will first be discovered in the coming time and then be called Kuiper belt. In it iron, rock and ice chunks accumulate, from which among other things also comets and meteors are formed, which then enter the inner Sol system from there, together with comets and meteors originating from the Oort cloud. The belt that you will see is actually outside the Pluto bane. As my daughter explained to you, already at the time of the Sol system formation it was important for the formation of the planets and life on them, and thus also for the overall development of flora and fauna.
This second belt, which Billy called the Kuiper belt in his contact report in July 1975, is of course the Kuiper belt. The existence of this belt was postulated as a theory by Julio Angel Fernandez in his 1980 publication on the existence of a comet belt beyond Neptune and confirmed by Scott Tremaine in 1988 by a computer simulation. It was the latter who coined the term Kuiper belt, in recognition of the theories of Gerard Kuiper from the years 1951 and 1974. Conclusion. Another piece of the puzzle to substantiate the fact that in the Billy Meyer case the saying,
"Even a blind hen sometimes finds a grain of corn,"
does not apply. Written by Christian Frenner of Switzerland.
A reader's question. Question: strange incident regarding this question.
Bill, here are my questions and the extracts.
I have already told you on the phone. I have received the following extracts from your 725th conversation between you and Ptaah by email. which I am enclosing as duplicates. Obviously some extremely interesting things have been said between you and the Plejadisch Ptaah, but I am interested in the deeper connections, such as, for example, what the prediction is about, which is talked about but not said. I would also like to know who this Professor Young is, whether he is still alive and if so, where he lives and where he can be reached. I would also like to know what is really negotiated in the excerpts sent to me where only dots are made. But also your silence about unknown flying objects, which certainly means UFOs, should be important to explain, because you obviously know more about it than the MUFON, the authorities, intelligence and security services, the military and the governments in America, Europe and Russia. There must be something hidden behind your silence, which is certainly important and should be public. As I told you on the phone, it is unfair if you keep quiet about matters that you should mention publicly, as you usually do in your book publications with the conversation reports. Why you make gaps in the text of the conversation and only dots and do not write what was said, I find very strange. I can accept that you will answer my questions in your next March bulletin, but I do expect you to explain everything. T. Wolf of Germany.
Predictions made available to the President of the United States by ... These presidents were not the only ones, because your predictions were sent to all the governments of all the states on Earth at that time. And in this respect Professor Young also acted on his own initiative, because at that time he was acquainted with 6 federal councilors of Switzerland, to whom he also sent everything, namely, the following names: Karl Kobelt, Rodolphe Rubatel, Max Petit-Pierre, Ernst Nobs, Enrico Celio and Edward von Steiger. Now I want to come straight to what we have just started. And that is that since we have known each other, you have often put forward questions, also to my daughter Semjay Santiketsala etc., for which you already knew the facts and therefore also the answers, and better than we did, for example with regard to unknown flying objects, like me, I also know now that you, have been instructed to act towards us and towards the earthlings as if you had no knowledge in this respect, so that you should act ignorantly, which you really did in such a way that none of us noticed that you already knew the facts and therefore also the answers before we,
Excuse me, I didn't mean to deceive you, as I said earlier, If it was, But this was only a part of the whole thing, just something I had to do until, That is so far, but then there is also the other thing from my side, namely that I am not allowed to speak openly in the future either, so that it does not get out in the open, whereas we,
Yes, I have all that, and therefore I also know that you, but there is also something unclear about it, because, what the meaning of this action should actually be, whereby, that, and I think that you knew about it, but to this day you have never mentioned anything about it, and all the time you have kept quiet and pretended to be ignorant. You have been doing this for 66 years, from, was, to the present day, but in all this time, we didn't realize that you, were,
the one who was,
With my behavior I didn't want to cheat you or deceive you, but I just didn't want to let you know that my questions were for the purpose of, All this never had anything to do with acting, because I'm too stupid and maybe even stupid, because I don't want to and can't pretend in this way, because I would feel quite stupid if I had to act. To simply give me ignorance and control my facial expressions accordingly is something different and has nothing to do with acting. because by doing so I would lose control over my facial muscles and probably turn bright red in my face. This actually happened to me once in my youth, when I was in the Faltigberg Pulmonary Sanatorium in the heights above Walden T divided by Stel, where I was on a cure for 8 months due to TB or tuberculosis. At that time, although I did not want to, and even against my will, I had to participate in a nativity play at Christmas in a hall full of people, and I had to play one of the 3 wise men. I felt more than just stupid and silly, and my head and face glowed so much that I felt like I was burning. Besides, in my thoughts I had also forgotten to take the gift that was lying in the changing room and which I should have given to Joseph, so I could only give him an empty hand. Well, it's good that in our contact conversations over the years I asked you certain questions, the answers to which I actually already knew through learning at ... But I pretended to know little or nothing about it. I simply did that ... to behave like that for a certain period of years ... for good reason. This time ... This is ordered for me in certain relations also for further on until the end of my life, so I have to do it. Also concerning diverse knowledge, which refers to the unknown flying objects, which are observed around the world again and make a lot of talk about themselves.
Answer.
As I already explained on the phone, I will only exceptionally answer your questions, because I usually do not get involved in things that are brought to me anonymously. In your case, however, this seems to me to be necessary because the excerpts of conversations sent to you were clearly stolen from me. As I also told you on the phone, I would check the original report to see what the dots are about. That is what I did after our conversation, and I did not find any dotted passages in the texts of the contact reports you mentioned, so that this dotting must have been done by the person, or persons, who sent you the extracts. And I must say that at the time you called me on the night of December 2, 2019, these excerpts were still and only contained in my computer, but had not yet been printed out or published. So how these excerpts got to you by email, I cannot understand. But I can only say that whatever you received was stolen from my computer. But what is not said by the dotted lines in the excerpts that you have sent me as copies, I will not explain in this answer to the question either. This is because the whole thing simply does not yet belong to the public, but only when the contact reports are published later in our contact meeting block. Besides, I don't know who you are and whether the name you give me is really yours and whether everything is as true as you told me when we spoke on the phone. The mere fact that you did not want to give me your address during the telephone conversation and that no sender, time or other details were given during the fax transmission, leads me to assume that with your identity etc. some things cannot be true. This alone is a factor that does not inspire me with confidence, which is why I did not give you a detailed answer on the telephone, saying that I would publish your questions in our FIGU Bulletin March 2020, which you can then read on the internet on our FIGU website. As for Professor Jung, he died a long time ago, and moreover, deceased people should be left to rest. With regard to the unknown flying objects or UFOs, which you ask about, that have been observed around the world since time immemorial, as they are observed today and will continue to be observed in the distant future, I am not sure about their real existence, origin and circumstances etc. Silence imposed. I follow that I may not give any information about it, nor may I give any special information or explanations, nor may I even hint at or effectively mention the real background. As for the knowledge and information of the various organizations you mention in your block of questions, such as MUFON, authorities, secret services, security services, the military and the governments of America, Russia and Europe, of which there are many. I have only to say that I have to keep silent about this too. All of these places have to explore everything themselves and gain their own insights and create their own knowledge, where they haven't done so just now and are not already well oriented. And that is all I have to say, but nothing more.
Billy,